Hi everybody, hope you're doing well. If you are new here, welcome. If you're coming back, thank you for returning. I'm in my summer uniform, which is my workout clothes and what I use to go to the storage room. I got this bookshelf finally put back together with tape and bubblegum and string. And I'm going to have to probably move it over because I'm going to be bringing in my dining room table and putting it in the corner. This place is going to be jam-packed full of stuff. So I'm once again downsizing and being led by Spirit to learn how to only have things as though I'm using them and I'm borrowing them. And at some point in life, I may have to be willing and able in my mind just to let it go and then reacquire whatever I need again in the future. But as you get older, you really do need to become, I think, less and less materialistic. Or just realize that the stuff you've got could be robbing you of your time. Okay, so one thing I want to talk about today is materialism in the form of money. One thing that I have learned is that the people that suffer from this condition of narcissism have several common threads. They're not all the same. It's not a cookie cutter system. You might watch a video and say, oh, many people are saying, yes, my narcissist spouse was a cheater. There's different ways to cheat. They don't necessarily go off with another person physically, okay? But in this case, cheating with you with money is a form of cheating, getting away with something. This condition that they suffer is fear-based because of what's happened to them in childhood. They are really consumed by fear, and this causes them to basically be, you can say, possessed by the spirit of fear and all of the other spirits that go along with that: greed, envy, jealousy, sloth. Well, there's one other. I came up with 5. But anyway, I think you know what I mean. So going from my experience of living with being raised by a narcissist mother and then marrying a narcissist man, they definitely had some very strong similarities. Both of them were covert narcissists, and they were very, very stingy. There's a difference between being thrifty and frugal. My friend is very thrifty, but she works very hard, and she and her husband save money. And she said to me, well, what's wrong with, being careful and holding on to as much of your money as you can? I said, there's a difference between being thrifty and frugal and having a poverty consciousness. And poverty consciousness is fear-based. You don't want to give, you don't like to give, and you don't have the courage that whatever it is that you've given or donated is going to come back to you. You don't have that kind of faith. You don't have that kind of courage. You just know that what you've got could go very fast and you need to hold on to it. And what a lot of people haven't learned yet is that you have to be reminding yourself that as I give, it can come back to me. It can and it will come back to me in the form that I need it, and it can definitely come back to me in the form of money. My mother was always pinching pennies. She talked about how great it was to be thrifty and frugal and how wonderful she was with money. And, if it weren't for me, we wouldn't have this and we wouldn't have that. And that is the way that they see it. Now, she went to the beauty school 99% of the time because it was cheaper. It takes longer, the visits are longer at the school, and I would, hang around sometimes until they finally suggested that my mom leave me at home, that I was just not, having enough to do for an hour and a half while she was there getting her hair dyed and rinsed and shampooed and all that stuff. But she loved being pampered, and the longer the better. There are other situations that I realized later on. For example, as she got older, in her 50s and her 60s, I remember one time she was using a shampoo with some milk-based product in it, and she asked me to smell it, and I said, "Whoa, that is sour. Really, I wouldn't use that on your scalp or your hair." She said, "It's okay. I don't want to throw away the money." Now, maybe you know someone like that. Maybe they grew up in the Depression, and that is just a part of, the way they began to think. But another time, when she was older than that, and she was in her mobile home, my sister said she went to smell the milk in the refrigerator to put into her coffee. She said, "Mom, I can't put this milk in your coffee. It's sour. You can't use this milk. You want me to throw it out?" She said, No, don't throw it out." Well, why not? I don't know what her reasoning was. It's acidophilus, or sour milk is good. I said, no, that sour milk is not the same thing as getting milk that has acidophilus or getting buttermilk. Don't throw it out. I paid my hard-earned money on that. So my mother was the type to, grab the sugar packets and look for coupons. Any way she could possibly look for deals to eat out. She loved being waited on, whether it was at the beauty parlor, the beauty school, or the restaurants. She normally ate out twice a day at least. I used to joke with her and say, "I swear, Mom, you must have been a socialite in your past life." One time she came over for Thanksgiving dinner, and I had a little bell, and we had a nice layout, and she just really complimented it. And I said, "Ring the bell." At some point I said, "Ring the bell." So she rang the bell, and I said, "Where is that butler?" Right? And she started to chuckle, and I said, "In your past life, Mom." And then she laughed some more, because she really did kind of act like the queen. There were other instances where choices with money and her mentality towards it began to be very, very evident as not good judgment. When my grandmother passed away, she convinced my father little by little to sell every single property that she had acquired. And I heard the conversations, and I even butted in, and I said, Grandma has spent years acquiring those properties. That townhouse that she has downtown is beautiful. Why don't you at least keep that and rent it out? And my dad said, "I know, I agree with you. I don't really feel comfortable." But he was passive, and in other words, he had gotten to the point where he knew somehow, some way he was going to be punished if he didn't do what she said was the best thing to do. He either would never stop hearing about it, or she might give him some type of cold shoulder, or start a smear campaign to get other people involved, and how correct she is in suggesting that you just sell all the properties together. So he eventually did do that. And I may have talked about this previously, I don't know. So it took several years. We moved from one place to another, and then to another, and then to another. No, I think there was 2 moves, maybe 3. When we finally bought a house in a nice area in Oxnard, California, We first had a beach house when we moved from Texas, and then we bought the house in Oxnard. It was there that the money started going because they had stopped working. What my mom had said was, we deserve to just get this money and retire. And he said, no, we're too young to retire. He continued to work. She didn't work at all for probably a year or so. And then she started to go back to work with him a little bit. So it took a couple of years for all of the money to go. He went to a broker. The broker lost some of the money that he gave him. And that was her excuse for divorcing him. We're running out of money. I can't now maintain the lifestyle, where I can just be at home and not working and having you all to myself and dominating you with my conversations. Whatever the reason was, she decided that it was time to discard him. Their intimacy had pretty much fizzled out. He just didn't really want to have intimacy with her anymore, and this is a side effect of being completely dominated, I think, by a woman. So, yeah, she decided that she just wanted to try to have, situationships with guys. And then every single one for the rest of her life was their fault when she decided she had to break it off. And there were times when I knew that she was using someone either for their connection to music so that she could get a music job, or that if she could check up with them for a while, she could just save money and get a new car. And that is what she did. She managed to pull me into it. And it wasn't until after she got the new car and then was able to get into a nice RV park resort community and get her Social Security that she began to mellow out a little bit. But she also became more of a hermit, staying at home and not being very active and not eating very much food. She went from one obsession to another so that she could save more and more of her money in the bank. It's a very long, drawn out story, guys. There's really no happy ending. She did live alone, but she was getting a bunch of cats, and the TV was on not 24/7, but all day until she went to bed at night. And she would also be on the phone calling someone at least once a day. Now, in the case of my husband, he was also extremely miserly, okay? Money was pretty much the only way that they could try to feel secure for both of them. And in the case of my husband, it was only working jobs that made just enough money for us to get by. And eventually that didn't even work because we had credit cards that we couldn't pay down. And things went from bad to worse slowly over time as the kids were growing, and he just was acquiring credit cards behind my back. And things I had suggested to him, he wouldn't do. And when I told him it would take us until we were 65 to pay down these credit cards, my friend was asking me what did he think, and I said, well, his response was, okay, well, we'll just pay until we're 65. But he had planned on leaving and going back to his country. So this was all about acquiring credits through work. Well, didn't he have a good work ethic? That's what I thought until recently. I'd heard him tell me that someone had mentioned if you go to America and you work and you earn credits, you can collect the Social Security check in your country. Go back to your country, collect the check, and you can live a nice life. Buy a piece of land, build a house. It's not that complicated. And so that, to me, I thought, is he making a confession? Because he was. I didn't want to entertain the idea at that time. I remember one time my son came to me and said, Mom, Dad's hiding money. It's under the passenger seat. in the van, in the drawer that has a lock, a key to it. And when I confronted him about it, he said no. And when I went out later to check it, it was empty. But my son was very good at ratting people out. He said, no, 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 I saw it. It wasn't much. I don't think, it probably took him 7 to 10 years just to get maybe, $3,000-4,000 saved. There wasn't much money to go around. He didn't really want to work except to earn the credits for his retirement. He always talked about, buying a house. And I had even tried to do that at one point. Get a loan to contract and have a house built. But the land surveyor decided that they weren't comfortable for some reason with us, and I guess our income, and the loan fell through. And I was doing too much anyway. I had a little baby, and then she got this bloody sty, and I'm trying to talk on the phone with these contractors so that we could actually build a house. And he was going along with it, but he wasn't helping me with anything. So that fell through, and then we tried to go and purchase a pre-existing home, and I decided, I was so depressed, and he had such bad judgment with money that I would just be taking our problems to the new house, and that's not a solution. You can't get caught up in the material life when your spiritual life is in the pits. There's no emotional connection. He can't give me a hug. He doesn't acknowledge my thoughts or feelings. There's hardly any conversation. Most of the time he's just sitting on the sofa thinking. The thinking man is not thinking good things, guys. They're strategizing and they're plotting and they're scheming and they're planning and probably thinking of ways to keep me even more isolated than he already had. I wasn't really allowed to have friends. So on the subject of money, this was just an ongoing problem where I would acquire new credit cards and transfer the balance for, no loan or no interest for 6 months and this and that. And it was just kicking the can down the road. Eventually, I ended up putting us in debt consolidation. He had gotten a job out of town with a friend, and they were staying together and working overtime. But even with that extra money coming in, it wasn't enough for us to get off of economic assistance. And this is, how we had fallen down. Now, there wasn't enough information for the average person to know how to invest or where to save. And we had been sold an air conditioner way too big for our mobile home and had a Sears credit card that we were paying on, but he wouldn't pay more than the minimum. So some things were not really our fault, but him acquiring more credit cards, when I had told him we have enough right now, we need to pay it down, was just more knives in my back. So I ended up eventually getting a book and studying how I could file bankruptcy for us. And by that time, I think I had also filed a divorce on my own. I was getting the process going and told him to move out. He rented a little mobile home at the end of the street. He came over one day and he said, "Can I file this bankruptcy with you?" I said, "Why? I thought you were okay with debt. Just keep paying it." "I'm getting rid of the debt that has my name on it. You're still going to be responsible for, I don't know what." I was just starting the process of reading this book and doing things on my own. He said, "Well, how much, how's it going to do? Because I've got these credit cards." I said, "I know you do." He said, "Well, how much do you want to include me in your filing of bankruptcy for things that are in your name?" I said, "Well, you'd have to pay a lawyer, probably $700 to $800 or more." He said, "Well, how much would you want from me to include me in this so that we can get a clean slate and try to start over again? I said, I'm not quite sure. Why don't you come back tomorrow? I'll let you know. So he came back and I thought about it. What can he afford? Not much. So I said, I want $350 to include you in everything I'm doing. And you're going to have to gather up your materials and come with me to the library so that we can, itemize everything and, do what I need to do on these forms to add all of this debt. He said, okay. But I knew there was just something wrong in his brain when it came to dealing with money and being responsible. He wasn't stupid. He went to university in his country, which was free, and after several years, he got a certificate for accounting, and he went to work in an accounting department for a company. But maybe you've known some accountants that aren't really very prosperous. Maybe he went to learn how to finagle the books. I don't know. But there were times when our bank balance was negative and I didn't like it. I said, this is a bad habit to get into. We have to figure out how to not have this. Oh, it's okay, it's just numbers. What do you mean it's just numbers? How many more months are we going to just have this negative popping up and it just doesn't it doesn't bother you? I said, because if we start having overdraft, the money has to come in to cover that pretty quick. But I turned it over to him because I was the primary caregiver of the children. He wasn't involved and I couldn't do anymore. That was just something I didn't know. I really should not have done. But he was still complaining about money, so this way he could see what was going on. He still wasn't handling it correctly. We did have some overdraft fees. I put some money in savings at the same bank, but when we went over, they took my money out of my savings to cover it. Do you see what I'm talking about here? So for this reason, there is a psychologist here on YouTube that says don't ever mix your money with someone who's you're seeing very early on that they're not doing good with money, especially with credit. They're paying the minimum, they're buying groceries, you're still paying the minimum. This is just a road to disaster. It's not play money, it's not free money. And whatever their plans are, for if filing bankruptcy or leaving you or whatever, and you'll be left holding the bag. So those are the two most dramatic examples that I can think of right now that I think would really paint the picture of how they don't really consider the fact that what they're doing is long lasting and it's not that easy to get back to where you were once you just let things accumulate. And they either don't care for their own reasons because they're just going to leave the country, or, so if you've got your own savings, your own 401k, which he was griping, he'd follow me around and gripe about me saving money in a 401k. You're hiding money, you're hiding money. That was a confession. And I told him, I'm not the one hiding money. You know about my 401k. I didn't know about your money in the van until our son told me. I'm not the one hiding money. You can't really live with someone like that who's not doing anything to try to change their fear-based thoughts. And that's a process. It's a daily thing that has to be done with certain phrases, certain words, and the time it takes to set aside to do that. These people that don't think they have anything wrong with them, or they're already over 50 years old, it's too late. So don't feel guilty if you're an empath in any way, shape, or form about having your own checking account, having it in a separate bank, having a savings account in a separate bank, having a 401k, or, saving in a retirement account, a mutual fund on your own somewhere else. That doesn't make you selfish. If he cannot provide for you money in a retirement account for your old age, you're doing it for yourself. You're welcome, spouse, husband. I'm doing it for myself. You're not responsible for me financially in my old age. You can't do it? Okay, I'm doing it for myself. Women need to learn about money. I bought a book about women and money. And then I began to learn how to invest on my own and not just depend upon a company to offer me a 401k. But, I've also had to come to realize, once again, you see where I am, that sometimes we just get too caught up in having money for the future, and we need to focus on the present and having everything that we need, and that material things are temporary. And the people in your life need to know that they are safe and protected because you're being careful and responsible with money. And some people say that it's equivalent to murder when you have destroyed your marriage financially. It's like putting a knife in your spouse's back. And that if you're having to file for bankruptcy court, usually the next step is divorce court. Money isn't everything. Like I said, material items are temporary. And I did know a couple that both of them were having trouble figuring out how to manage their money correctly. And they just put a bunch of items on their credit cards, and then they both filed for bankruptcy, and they stayed together and they started over again. So you've got to sometimes learn it's okay to have your own. If you've ever heard the saying, God bless the child that has their own. Women need to learn how to use money, manage money, save money, invest money, spend money. And it wasn't until I left and the divorce was over that I heard he was finally using coupons and shopping. Mom, Dad's using coupons. And finally took my suggestion for him to join his company's 401k. And so over the next 5 years, he had several $1,000s that he could take out of that to add to whatever else he got from the sale of the mobile home, which I didn't ask for any money from that because I don't even know how I would have done that. But I had received child support over the years, so that was that. And that's my story for today. Have a good rest of the day, and I will talk to you later. Take care.